Hey everybody, and welcome to the Growth Experience Podcast. I am your host, Chris Dye. Our hope is that by listening to this podcast, you realize that you have a gift. And by believing in your gift, you can uncover your purpose and have vision for your life. Whether you're listening in your car, at home, or watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in, and let's go! What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 18 of the Growth Experience Podcast. I know this is your favorite time of the month when we have our Family Matters series, so we brought Kelsey back. I wanted to do like a Mother's Day episode, and that didn't really work out very well. We kind of had a crazy last couple weeks.
We did have a crazy weekend.
We did, yeah. That Mother's Day weekend especially. And so wanted to bring my wife, my beautiful wife, back onto the show, and we carved it out for today. So before we get started, as always, I want to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Community Land Title in Louisville, Kentucky. Community Land Title is a full-service land title and escrow settlement provider here to protect your real estate investments. When you work with their knowledgeable team, you will be guided through the process in a transparent and timely way. Always, always, always shout out to Community Land and just their expertise and care with clients. We've got a lot of closings happening over the next few weeks, and they are coordinating a large amount of them. And so I appreciate them. Shanna has a closing today. Shout out to Shanna. Shout out to the squad. Our real estate team is really rocking, and Community Land is a huge part of that. So thank you to Community Land. If you don't have a title company as a real estate agent that you work with on the regular, you need to call Matthew Purdom at Rocket Title, or formerly Rocket Title Group, now Community Land. You might know them as Rocket Title, but it's Community Land now. So anyways, without further ado, we have my wife Kelsey, and we said that after the last episode in April that we were going to start choosing a topic, right, of conversation, honing in a little bit more, focusing in instead of doing, the broad brush stroke, which we did over the last couple months. And so today we are talking about communication. Lots of different forms of communication, right? And so I want to preface this episode, and this goes for all future episodes where we do pick a topic. We will be the first to tell you that we are not perfect at any of these things.
0%.
But we are growing constantly, and we feel like they're important, right? So those are the two main criteria for the topics that we choose. So anyways, I'm going to let you kick it off.
Me.
Communication.
Yeah, so I asked him the other day, I was like, so what's our topic for the month? And we kind of were brainstorming together on what it could be. And like he said, we're by far from being a perfect married couple, but I feel like at least we are growing constantly and trying to always make it better. And one thing we've gotten exponentially better about is communication. We still have a long way to go, but from where we started to where we are now is a huge improvement. So I was like, I feel like we could speak on that because we've come a long way. We've learned a lot.
Right. And that's important too, as you stated that like we want to choose things that, again, that are important, that we feel like are important and that we're growing in, but also have improved vastly in, so we can show you kind of where we started and where we are now and the things we've implemented along the way to be here, right?
Yeah. Anywhere we can add value, right? That's the whole point. So I feel like we've got a few little tips and tricks and things that we can share. So
what's the first one? What's the first kind of, if you were to dive into communication for us, marital, let's just talk about between you and I, marriage communication within our marriage. What does that look like? What did it look like? What's it look like now?
So the biggest thing for Chris and I is we had to learn love languages first. So like Chris's is words of affirmation, which is super important in communication, and then like physical touch. And mine is acts of service and quality time. And so we're opposites. We've already discussed this, but so when it comes to communicating, I am very much, I want to like sit down. I want to like look at you. I want to have a conversation and know that you are in it with me, right? And so, in the beginning of our relationship, we were long distance, so that was challenging. But, so we went from we're communicating via phone all the time to now we're in person, and having to kind of really hone in on, okay, like no distractions, let's kind of put phones down, and like I need to know you're here, right? Like that was always a big thing for me. And then, for Chris, it's like, if he doesn't feel like the love, sorry, I did the thing. If I'm not, just like saying, hey, and you look really good today, and like,
oh, thank you,
I'm really proud of you, and you did great on that, and things like that. So, I was really bad at that for a long time. I was a single mom, so, we always joke. We always sing INDEPENDENT.
Yep.
Yeah, we sing that a lot. That was like my mentality for a long time, right? It's like, I don't need no man,
Yeah. And she would say that, not just the mentality. We'd get in these little tiffs, and she'd be like, I don't need no man. And I'm like, but that's the growth, growth experience within our marriage.
That doesn't happen anymore. Now we just joke about it.
Right.
But yeah, so to me, I think really recognizing those things, like, okay, this is what I need, and this is what you need, and like, how can we best work together to fulfill that? Is a big thing.
Absolutely, I love that. One of the things that I've listened to a lot. I listen to a lot of personal growth stuff, right? And occasionally I'll throw in a marriage podcast or something like that, or I'll just hear something. And one of the things that I have heard and picked up on is that most people will say that relationships and marriage are 50-50. And this one person, I don't remember who it was the first time I heard it expressed that marriage is not 50-50, or relationships are not 50-50, right? You want to be 100% all in, each person meeting each other at 100%, giving your 100%.
That's really good.
Yeah, I thought so too. I didn't come up with it, but it resonated with me, because if you're only coming 50, you're probably only coming that 50% that's comfortable to you, right? And I think that is super important when discussing these areas of growth within a relationship or within a marriage, is that if you only do it the way that you want it done all the time, you're not going to be successful, right? There's going to be huge voids and gaps, and you're not going to, in this case, communicate well. And if you don't communicate well enough, then you're not going to receive what you're looking for either, right?
Right.
So, yeah, we've come a long way in that.
Yep.
Love you.
Love you. That would be my, I guess, like, starting point. I don't know. I think also over time, I feel like it just kind of naturally happens too, right? Like I know that you hate explaining things.
Yeah.
And you know that, like, I hate it when you always try to fix everything for me, when sometimes I just need to talk. So, like, we've learned those little quirks about each other, and, are able to kind of really, like, okay, let me just think before I say that out loud, because I know that's going to set them off, Yeah,
and it's really like, so in that scenario, right? Like, I connect really well to people. I'm a relational person, but if you follow the DISC personality and profile tests, I'm also a high D, which is dominant. When those people like bottom line details, like tell me where to go, when to be there, and what to wear, basically, right? And that's why I fit so well into the military, because that's a no nonsense kind of deal, right? Like you show up, and if you don't, then you're in trouble. And so that's kind of my secondary mentality attached to the relational person that I am. And it's not necessarily that I hate explaining things. It's more so the fact that what details I find are important are oftentimes not the important ones to her, or don't explain in depth of what's going on, right? So that's the communication piece. It's like, no, that's not what you were looking for. Oh, okay, here's the full umbrella of what's going on, right? So it's a learned thing on how to explain and express the details that the other person needs. And I'm not always good at that, and I will share my disgruntledness sometimes when asked for those details. But I've learned that you might as well just go ahead and say it, because it's coming out one way or the other. So I think that's what, for me, that's what I've learned with communication. It's funny you say that, because like Will, our director of operations, chief operations officer for our team, and then Shanna, she's our transaction coordinator, transaction manager, you three are wired very similarly. And I remember one time we were talking about it, and you said, don't you think God is trying to show you something right now with the way that you have to explain everything to everybody? And I'm like, yeah, maybe you might have a point there. So yeah, that's the space where I've had to grow in that, for sure.
But you've come a long way.
Thank you.
You have. I'm proud of you.
I appreciate that. That's an affirmation right there. I will receive that. Thank you so much. So yeah, I mean, and on the flip side of that coin, like, what'd you say mine was?
Your what?
My thing was like direct bottom line, like details, and yours was what? I forget what you said.
I said sometimes like I just want to vent and you.
Right, yes. So one of the things that I've learned, again, that I picked up through one of these marriage deals is like, most of the time I will ask you, hey, do you want support or solutions?
Yes.
Right?
Well, lately, yeah, that's what we do. And
yeah. Because like, if you say support, then I just need to.
Then you're like, yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, like, oh, what a turd, like, whatever that looks like. And, sometimes it's not even saying anything, but like just allowing you to feel your feelings in the moment, right? Maybe 9 times out of 10, you probably don't want me to say anything. And then solutions, when I ask, that's the part of me that really gets going. My brain is wired for efficiency and solutions, right? So I'm a creative thinker. So if I say solutions, or if you say I need a solution, or you say like, hey, I need you to help me solve this, I need you to help me work this out, that's where I really thrive. But the support thing is what I've had to work on a lot too.
Also, you've come a long way.
Thanks, babe. Thank you.
And feel free to criticize me. I feel like I'm not trying to do that purposefully.
No. I mean,
I was just giving examples.
Well, the same kind of thing, right? Like, sometimes I'll say, like, do you really need that detail? Like, do you really need that detail, or is it just something that will give you peace of mind, right? Like, here's the important, pertinent things. And, you're able to step out of that and be like, all right, that's fine. So I think that we've rubbed off on each other for sure in that area. Okay, so that's like kind of 2 big areas that we've grown in communication. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I was just going to say another thing that, we've both learned, and I think that this kind of has come second hand to growing more in our faith, but learning when to not speak. I think that, like, you know, Chris, we both recently listened to a sermon about, you know, just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it. And so now that's like a thing that we do with each other. Like, just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it. So, like, you know, it's just, I would say, like, early on in our marriage, we were never, like, terribly mean to each other or anything like that. But we said, like, hurtful things, you know, on both ends.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just realize how powerful your words are, because once you say it, you can't take it back. So it's like, you know, I feel like it's so important in a marriage to make sure that, like, what comes out of your mouth is like, do I really need to say this right now? Like, is this constructive? Is this just, like, gonna make me feel better? You know, like, so we have both come a long way in that as well. Still working on it, though. That's, I'd say, a newer one that we have really focused on.
It's a hard one. And honestly, a lot of that's because culturally, too, we all feel like we always have to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Right? Like, how many times is there, you post something on Facebook that, you know, somebody doesn't like, and they have to tell you that they don't like it, right? And that's just not always true. I listened to another podcast, Jocko Willink, and he said, you don't always have to have an opinion. And that's such a foreign concept for us, right?
Yeah.
And the big thing, too, you know, whether that is somebody that's an acquaintance that you know on social media or a legitimate relationship, right, that opinion that you have, if it's not necessary, it can be hurtful. And that's where, you know, I have definitely struggled in the past to, sometimes you just need to keep that to yourself because, like you said, you know, that might make me feel better in the moment, but if you ask yourself, like, hey, did that speak life into Kelsey, or did that upset her? Why would I ever want to purposefully upset my wife? I'm gonna let that marinate. I'm gonna let that one marinate because that was good. Why would you ever want to purposefully upset someone that you love, someone that you care about? And you shouldn't, in my opinion. That's my opinion. And so we should continue to use our words to lift each other up, build each other up, speak life into one another. It's a faith-based thing that, you know, we believe in. Your words, life and death lies in the power of the tongue, right?
Yeah.
Look that one up. And it's true. I kind of want to roll. If you want to sit here for a minute, that's fine, but that kind of makes me want to roll into our next topic, if that's cool with you.
The only other thing I was going to say on that is, like, it even speaks into parenting, right? We tell our kids.
Thank you, God. That's exactly where I was going. Communication with our kids, right? Not just between us, but with our kids.
Yeah, I mean,
see how in sync we are?
We tell them all the time, like, you don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
Especially Olivia. God love her. She is my mini me.
And it's funny, too, because she's seeing it more now over the last few months than ever. I'll be like, do you not realize that she is you? She
needs
you.
all the details.
Yes.
She needs to know the plan, like, a week in advance, because she will literally, okay, Monday we're doing this, Tuesday we're doing this, Wednesday we're doing this, and, like, she has to know. And sometimes we're like, Olivia, you don't have to know. It's okay.
It's exhausting to even the planner in the house. So it's exhausting for me. My gosh, I'll tell her one time, be like, Olivia, I'll pick you up when I get there. Like, you know, you will be okay. We will take care of it. Just trust, right? So, yeah. And that's, it's so funny that you went there, because that's exactly where I was going to go. And I'm saving the best for last, which we didn't talk about, but I got a good one. Communication with our kids, right? How we communicate to them. We talked about this, I think, last time as well, right? Like, understanding your children's gifts and how to speak into them, right? Same deal. And it's worse. It has been for me. It's worse with your children. I did a Proverbs 31-day challenge January of 2020, right? I think it was 2020. Where 31 days in January. No, it was 21. It was 21.
Yeah.
It was 21. We lived in Mount Washington. Yeah. So January of 2021, 31 days in January, 31 chapters in the book of Proverbs in the Bible. And each night I went through, and really the biggest thing that God showed me was, man, the angriest I ever am is at my kids. And ever since then, there are times, listen, man, we're not perfect, right? There are times, and this show is about transparency. I said that a couple weeks ago. I'm not ever going to sit up here and be holier than thou, right? I'm right there with everybody else. But I have grown a lot. And that Proverbs 31 Day Challenge, I'd say that's the number one thing that I took away personally. And so how I communicate with my kids, why would I ever want to purposefully make my child cry? Right? And growing up, for me, corporal punishment was in full swing. There were times where I just flat out cried and was upset. And there's ways that I'm still in the infancy stages, I would say, of disciplining and correcting my children without like tearing them down, right? And that's something that it's hard.
It's very hard. I mean, I've struggled with anger a lot, which a lot of people would be surprised by because I'm very typically like mild-mannered and pretty laid back, but sometimes them kids just get you right in the spot,
which
you know?
Buttons to punch, not just press.
But yeah, I mean, it is. I totally agree. It's like the most heartbreaking thing to see your kid like just kind of like melt down in front of you because of something you said, and it's like, oh yeah. So we together have been working on that a lot in our houses. Like, is that speaking life? Like, because there's never a need to like say something that's gonna just bring someone down. There's times where you need to be firm and like obviously correct and discipline, but name calling and stuff like that, it's just never necessary. And so we don't do it in our marriage, and we are working on never doing it with our kids as well, and then passing that down to them, like, you all don't need to be calling each other names. Like, it's just there's no need for it. So yeah, it's a big one.
It is. And I'd say, which is important, I think we got it working on the right path with us before. Like, you got to get it here, right? Before you can implement and mirror to your kids. A lot of people in our society, and we've had conversations about this, right? Being transparent. What is the pecking order and the hierarchy for our family, right? God, marriage, kids. So we had to get it right here first before we can talk about, how to implement that and mirror that for our children. And it's a constant.
Oh yeah, we are 100% a work in progress.
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah. And the cool thing too is that we allow. It's hard it's sharp. It feels sharp in the moment, but we allow ourselves to correct each other in front of our kids sometimes. And I think that's important too, right? To where if I'm going, I can hold it in and hold it in and hold it in and hold it in until I can't. And then I just like, you remember that thing last week? And I just go in on these kids, man. And so Kelsey will be like, Chris. And I'm like, oh, you're right. And vice versa, right? So like there's times where it goes the other way too, where we just both need to like, hey, you take a break and I'll jump in.
Yes.
And you take a break and I'll jump in, because that is okay and it happens.
We're all human. Like we're gonna feel our feelings sometimes, and sometimes we feel overwhelmed, and for me that comes out as anger. And so Chris has been great about like realizing that, like just take a minute, take a beat. I got this, Beth. You go do your thing. Like,
which typically Kelsey is the rock star of our home with the kids, right? 'Cause I do so many different things, and those kids, they love us both, but it's so special for me, growing up without that motherly presence around all the time. It's truly special for me to watch how much our kids love you. Don't cry.
Stop.
No, you can cry. You can cry. You can cry on the show. I'm trying to tell myself not to cry. But, man, those kids, they love her. They truly love her unconditionally. And, again, another quote that I've kind of heard is that when you constantly get on your kids, they don't think that there's something wrong with you. They think there's something wrong with them. And that mental space, everybody talks about mental health now. You should be concerned about the mental health of your children. And that's something that we try and put at the forefront of our minds when dealing with them, when parenting them,
loving them,
raising them, dealing with them. No, that was not a good.
I wasn't going to say anything, but then you did. So
the Holy Spirit was telling me to rewind. But we don't edit anything, so keep it real. Anyway, so yeah, communication with our kids. Anything that you want to kind of throw in the mix on that?
I think we hit the biggest things for sure.
Mm-hmm. I will say too, one last thing is like, we're still working on this, but I feel like we're getting better at it, is don't do that. Don't talk to your brother that way, right? Mm-hmm. What does that do? That doesn't really do anything. I'll be honest with you. So being able to say like, hey, those are not kind words, mm-hmm. right? Here's how you need to respond.
Let's try again.
Yep, let's try again. Here's how we need to handle this situation. That's a big one. And one of the things I love that you tell the kids, a lot of times kids, like, they'll just kind of overblow things that might be difficult, or if they're being challenged, right? I can't do it. This is too hard. Da, 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 da. She says this. I forget to say it, but I love that you say you can do hard things, right? How you communicate with your kid directly, but then also helping them communicate with each other when they have siblings or other friends. I think that's a kind of a triangle of how you communicate with your child and how they communicate with other people.
Well, and how they talk to themselves too,
mm-hmm.
right? Like,
mm-hmm.
it's that we've been working through like negative self-talk. Like,
mm-hmm.
If you say you can't, then you can't. But
right.
like, let's keep trying and say that we can.
Yeah.
Matthew
kind of gets that at earlier.
He's hysterical.
Earlier than the others.
Well, because I read this thing that was like, your kids really get a different version of of each parent, even if you're all in the same household.
Man, that's true.
And it's because, like, typically, you're in different seasons. You might be in a season of growth or in a hard season or whatever. And so these like core years, where you're raising them up, you might be in a different place. And I think that just is really evident with our younger kids. And unfortunately, it's like, we don't have to correct Matthew on like the way he speaks nearly as much.
Yeah.
And his favorite thing is, I got this.
Yeah.
And I love it so much.
Yeah. Before T-ball or, whatever, he had his little ceremony last night for preschool. He's like, I got this, Daddy. He crushed it. Yeah. He was up there on stage, no qualms. Hi, Mommy. Hi, Daddy. Hi, Olivia. Like right in the middle of all of his friends. And he has such a good mix between the both of us, that extrovertness, and then also just being able to also be by himself and enjoy things on his own, which something you love to do that you don't get enough opportunity to do so. But yeah, and that's, man, I didn't even think of that. So thank you for pointing that out. That's so true, that like we've never been more in tune with ourselves than we are right now as we're raising him as the youngest, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, Lainey's the youngest, but she can't talk yet.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, as the youngest that's able to actually communicate, which is what we're talking about. So yeah, that's...
she's got Daddy down pat.
She does. She calls you Daddy. By the way, it's hilarious. I mean, I don't even really want it to change, but at the same time, like, eventually we got to get it sorted out, right? So, like, when Kelsey comes to the door, she'll say, "Daddy!" It's like, Daddy number one, Daddy number two. We're interchangeable at this point, depending on whichever one's around, and it is hysterical. Yeah. But we're working on that. That's the communication piece that we're working on with our 16-month-old. So,
Mama,
yeah. Yep, we're working on that. So, Awesome. Well, last thing that I wanted to talk about, there were 3 kind of areas, and I already kind of tipped it off, is that, communication with us within our marriage, communication with our kids, saving the best for last, communication with God and in our faith, right? And that's something we have touched on in previous episodes, but these 2 things are getting better because this main rock is growing. And what we've gone through over the last couple years, helping build a church and be a part of, trying to actually disciple people, disciple ourselves in our marriage, our children, learning how to communicate with God. You touched on it the very last episode of like prayer, right? And or if that's our way to connect with God, and kind of activate like the Holy Spirit that's within us, right? The power of God that lies within us, but then also how to listen. That's communication, right? If it's not two-way, it's just a monologue. Right. And so being able to listen, know when God is speaking to you, what are some things, some light you would shed on communication with God?
I think the biggest thing is just like consistency, right? The more you do it, the easier it gets. It's like anything that you practice, right? The more you do it, the more it becomes like second nature. So for me, I feel like just making sure I'm being consistent in prayer and reading the Bible, I'm able to kind of feel like I'm more in tune with what He is trying to speak to me.
Yeah, that's good. Again, I'll be the first to tell you I don't read every day. Like I really try to. I've got, at worst case scenario, I've got a Bible plan ready to go on my YouVersion app that at night I'll lay in the bed and just, all right, I haven't done this nearly as much as I should. It tells us to meditate on the Word day and night, right? So I'll pull it up and at least read something, pray before I go to bed. So again, we're not up here preaching at anybody. But yeah, you can't hear from the Lord if you don't actually take time to listen. Right? Just as we're communicating with one another, if I'm constantly trying to get my jab in or get my opinion or point across, like I'm not listening to you, and I'm not hearing what you're actually needing, right? Not just wanting, but in that moment, that's what you need. And so I think that I would be remiss if we didn't bring this up, because for us, it's what has really helped us over the last really 8 years, 7 years married, 8 years together, be able to even aspire to grow in these areas, right? Sometimes you can just be in a situation, whether it be a relationship, a job situation, life situation, to where you're just kind of complacent. You don't even really care about growing. And we've been there. There's certainly been times where we've been there, but again, I think this is the most important topic, right? So as you're learning how to communicate with your significant other in your relationship, or with your kids, with your coworkers, friends, family, whatever that looks like, I would highly encourage you to just be in the Word, right?
Yep.
The YouVersion app has literally, even if it's you just start out with the verse of the day, it's kind of how we got rolling, I think, is, immediately first thing in the morning I've got the widget on my phone the YouVersion widget, and I'll swipe over on my iPhone, and boom, there's the verse of the day every single day. And, you know, I make sure to make that a point as well as a devotional.
Yeah, and you can search those, you know, based on like, you know, if you're going through a season where your anxiety is high, you can just type in anxiety, and there's like a plethora of devotionals on anxiety that just speak directly to that. So.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that's the most important one to me. And I feel like even as we talked about growth in the other areas of communication, we've grown a lot in being together in our pursuit of, you know, His righteousness and His plans for our lives, and communicating with Him through prayer, communicating with each other what we feel like we're hearing from the Lord.
Yeah, that's important.
That's a huge one. You got to have the courage to be able to do that. And it takes a minute, man. It takes a while. I would say that piece for us has really started to show up over the last year to year and a half.
Yeah.
Because sometimes God is speaking to that person what He wants that person to hear. And you've got to communicate that with your significant other. And because you didn't hear it, sometimes you won't believe it, right? And I think that is a pause, is a time for a pause and reflection on, I need to listen because God is speaking to Kelsey. And I need to understand. And I've gotten a lot better at, what do you mean by that? Like, where do you think God is leading you? Where do you think He's trying to take us, our family, right? So that's a huge piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. All right. Well, not too long today. Not too long today at all. So, anyways, I hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Except for a couple weeks ago, this series gets the most love on social media. So if you found this helpful, it'll be a blessing and a gift to us. If you would share this content wherever you're listening, wherever you're consuming the content, whatever platform you're on, if you would please like, share, subscribe, that would be huge for us. This series is one of the reasons why I was super excited to even start the show. Kind of had this from the beginning. So thank you for continuously coming on. You provide so much value to the listener, and you're the real star of the show. That's why you get the most love on all the episodes that we do together. So again, continue to please buy into the show, share it with whoever you feel like needs to hear it. And if you found it valuable, please reach out to us. We've talked about it before, right? Kelsey on Facebook or Facebook Messenger, where she responds the quickest, even outside of text. Really no point in giving you her number because she's a little slow on the text or call, but she usually gets back to you quickly on Messenger. So anyways, reach out if you feel like that's something you need to do, if you have any more questions. Again, I want to remind you that this show is sponsored by Community Land Title. They're a full-service land, title, and escrow settlement provider here to protect your real estate investments. When you work with their knowledgeable team, you will be guided through the process in a transparent and timely way. I don't just say this every week. We actually use Community Land Title every opportunity that we get. And just like every other episode, I want to let you know that you have a gift. It's time to grow in it.